Hey, it was Des back with another video. So yeah, obviously we lost to Everton. Our loss has never felt so good. It's never felt so good. Thinking back at what happened since we lost to Everton, obviously there was a lot of panic from the fan base and stuff. But with me, the way we played, there wasn't any need for me to panic because I knew that we didn't play as bad as it made out. Like what happened in the game wasn't something that I would be thinking to myself like, okay, this is going to become a downward spiral. No, it wasn't like that. There was specific things that happened in that game to allow me to think that okay, that's set for this game. Maybe could be an issue going forward based on the way we play. Teams can start trying to replicate that style against us like they do with Man City and like they do with Liverpool. But for this season, I didn't think it was something that was going to become like a major issue. So it wasn't something I was panicking about. I feel like it's something we can correct for this season going forward. But even and obviously, then that happened. So for me, straight after the game, I wasn't panicking or anything like that because I felt like it wasn't something that was going to be replicated often enough to derail our title season. And then obviously, straight after that, we had Tottenham beating Man City, which then completely helped us again because then that took another points. That took obviously points of City and stuff like that again. So which again helped us as well. So then helped the panicking because when you think about it, when we went into this set of games, we had Newcastle, we had United, we had Tottenham, we had Everton. On paper, Everton was the easiest game. Yeah, we drew to Newcastle, but we beat both United and Tottenham. I think in this block of 4 games, if we had beat Everton and then maybe dropped points, or maybe lost to Tottenham or lost to United or something like that, it would have been looked at a bit more differently. You know what I mean? So I feel like because we beat both United and Tottenham and drew to Newcastle, for me, the Everton game was like, okay, that's happened, but at least we know what we did in the other games. You see what I mean? So I wasn't panicking too much. And then obviously when Tottenham beat Man City again, that helped. And then obviously all of this news that's broke with Man City, like a possible ban or a possible deduction of points or whatever the case may be. I don't think any of that will happen this season. I think it's something that'll be postponed for a future season. But it's definitely going to be something that's going to affect like their morale and something that's going to affect their season. You can already see that some players are not happy with it, like Bernardo Silva. Obviously, Cancelo's gone. Even De Bruyne, you can see certain players are not happy. Pep at the moment, not happy with the situation or what's going on and things like that. So I think we're in a good state. I think we've got we're in a good place to maintain our form. Whilst Man City, for me, they seem more likely to continue to be inconsistent than to go on this long run that people seem to think they're going to go on. So with that said, going into the game, just to like break down what happened in the game and why it turned out like that, and I think Everton did really well in terms of they're playing that 4-4, like they're defending like a 4-5-1 sort of like, in a way like that, or 4-4-2 kind of with Onana moving up with the striker. The way they defended like deep, compact. They had two players constantly on our wingers, and they were really compact. You know what I mean in the midfield, so there wasn't any space in the central areas for us to exploit. And at the same time, in the wide areas, they had two players on our winger, and obviously because of the way we play, where our fullbacks drift inside. Do you see what I'm saying? So it's like we don't have enough overlaps on the front. We don't have enough overlaps on the wide areas whereby so then it can become easy for the opposition to do like a 2v1 situation. So Saka ended up in a 2v1 situation with their fullback and their wingers. The same was happening with Martinelli on the other side. So when there's not enough overlaps, either coming from midfield or coming from the fullback, those situations can sort of happen. And then I think in those sort of games where you need a breakthrough in those kind of games, which was kind of similar to the way Newcastle played as well, where they were compact like that as well, doubled up on our wingers, and the main areas that could be exploited was in the middle, which we needed the likes of Xhaka and Odegaard. And I think long term, this is why I say this season may not be a concern because Xhaka has been doing well, but long term, this is where you start to look at the player that plays in that Xhaka's position. This is where you start to ask more from Odegaard, because in games like this is why, for example, you see how Pep uses Bernardo Silva in that role, he uses David Silva in that role. This is where you need the kind of players who are going to receive between lines, be able to receive the ball, turn under pressure, and then drive in order to create gaps in the middle. I think Pep is the one who said something quite similar to this, whereby he says dribbling in the midfield really helps, like centrally, because he breaks down and it helps to disorganize the opposition. So I think it was similar with the Newcastle and the Everton game in terms of the way they defended, in terms of the gaps weren't really there properly. We needed more ball carrying through the middle of the pitch in order to create some gaps, because as Son Dijk said himself, like the way they defend is very compact and they move they shot off from side to side. So they don't split up their sides. They don't stretch to go to the wide areas because they have all their players back there. They don't need to be split. They don't need to stretch. You have to stretch them by dribbling directly at them. That's how you're going to get to them. So I feel like we didn't get enough of that from Xhaka and Odegaard. And then the wide players were just stuck out really wide in 2v1 situations, and they couldn't really do much in those cases. So, and then the way they exploited us, even though they didn't score from these chances, where the majority of their chances came from them doing the overlap. So where we were lacking is where they were having a lot of overlaps, not just from their fullbacks, but from their midfielders. All the likes of Onana was overlapping from midfield, overlapping past our midfield and getting into the box or getting into the wide areas. The likes of Doucouré as well was also overlapping from midfield and getting into the box as well, getting on the end of some headers. I think Onana created a situation for Calvert-Lewin because he was able to overlap, get on the edge of the box and cross the ball for Calvert-Lewin to nearly get a tap in. Doucouré as well was another one who overlapped and got on the end of a header. They also had another situation for Calvert-Lewin as well, where Seamus Coleman overlapped Iwobi and then got a cross in as well. So I feel like that's where they created a lot of chances. Although they scored from a corner, those are mainly where they were getting their chances from. It was a lot of overlaps which we were lacking. I think we needed to see more from Xhaka. We needed to see more from Odegaard, because especially when our wide players are being stifled like that, you need to see more rotation. And even in that sense, I said before, Martinelli is quite wide as well. If we saw a bit more rotation, maybe from the fullbacks, then he can be inside. When you get a lot of that rotation, that it then starts to create gaps in your team. It starts to create openings because one player is going this way and one player is going that way. That's where the gaps start to open up. But I'll go into that more later in the video anyways. But yeah, that's where I think the game was won and lost, in the way they defended and the way they attacked our side by constantly overlapping. That helped them a lot compared to, so what they had was what we lacked in the sense, and that was what really helped them in that game. That maintained their threat and at the same time stifled us from creating anything substantial. We didn't really create much due to that. But yeah, looking at overall the title chase, for me, I say over and again, we just need to keep chasing these 28 wins. For me, I think, like I said, remember when I talk about that block of 4 games where I said about where it's like you split the whole season into blocks of 4 games, and you just have to make sure you only drop points in 1 game per 4 blocks. And if you do that, you can end up with 28 wins. And I feel like we're on course for 28 wins. We just need to make sure we don't lose to City. Even if it's a draw, we're fine. In order to get 28 wins, you need to make sure you only drop points in 10 games the whole season. And if you ensure that you only drop points in 1 game per 4 block per block, then it helps you long term, because then you have 3 wins per block all the time. And if, for example, you have like 4 wins in the whole block, which we did twice this season, which is why even though we drew to Newcastle and we lost to Everton in this block of 4 games, it's fine because we have another block where we won all 4 games. We have another block again where we won all 4 games. So now we're down to the possibility of using one of those spare games that we didn't drop in that other block. We can use it in another block in the future, because at the moment we're ahead of time. Right now we should be on 15 wins, but we're on 16 wins. So we're 12 wins away to getting 28 wins. And like I said already, to get 28 wins, you can only drop points. You can only drop points in 10 games. You look at City, for example, they've already dropped points in, I think it's 7. They've already dropped points in 7 games already. We've only dropped points in 4 games. So when you look at, and we're halfway through the season already. So when you think about it, City, for City to get 28 wins, which I feel like we can make 28 wins in order to win the league. For City to make 28 wins, they have to go through the rest of the season only dropping points in 3 games. They can't drop points in more than 3 games. And I don't think that's going to happen, especially if we draw to them as well. We completely take that away. Then they have to go the rest of the season making sure they only drop points in 2 games. And I don't think they're being consistent enough for them to be able to maintain that level where they can hit 28 wins. I think we can actually do that. We've only dropped points in 4 games this season, 2 draws and 2 defeats. So we have 6 games that we can end up dropping points in towards the future. So for me, that's already does enough for us, and that already secures us. I think we can definitely get 28 wins. I think for City to get 28 wins, they have to win 14 of their next 17 games. For us, we only have to win 12 of our next 18. You see what I'm saying? So it's more likely, and we're the team in form, so it's more likely that we're able to hit this 28 win mark compared to Man City. I feel like the game against City is a big game. we just have to make sure we don't lose that game. If we draw that game, for me, I feel like that's it. The title's done. We're gonna win. We're gonna win the league. Even if with just a draw, I think we've won the league. We just can't lose that game. A draw and the league is ours. For me, anyways, that's what I think. But yeah. The next thing I was going to talk about again, like I said, our next block of 4 games is literally what Brentford, City, Villa, and Leicester. And remember, and what's it called? And in those games, for me, I feel like I feel like we can do well in this block. Again, the biggest one is even if we beat Brentford, beat Villa, beat Leicester, just make sure we don't lose to City. Get a draw to City, we're fine. That's just the main thing. We just need to we're ahead of schedules, or in terms of getting 28 wins, we're already ahead of schedule already, because we've got 16 wins instead of 15. I think that City game is going to be massive. It's going to be massive, but I think we can definitely do it. City are not in the right state at the moment. Pep is obviously going to be getting a lot of questions for their City. Are going to be getting a lot of questions from the media regarding what they've been doing in terms of like doctoring their books and things like that. I don't think they're in the right state. Everyone keeps on thinking that Arsenal are the one that's going to flop, or like City are going to go on this insane run, but there's no sign for us to feel like City are going to do that. You know what I mean? Like they've not shown this season that it's something that they're going to be capable of doing. Yeah, maybe in the past they've done it, but nothing from what they've shown this season is proof that City are going to go on this massive run. I think if anything, it's likely it's us that's going to go on that massive run. But again, that Man City game is huge. Ideally, you go and you beat them, but even a draw for me and the title should be ours after that. But yeah, next thing I want to talk about was the big takeaway I said from that game in terms of when teams start to double up on your wingers and are compact. Remember, I was talking about earlier on about where I feel like the space was. The space was in the middle. I remember this interview that Pep did where he spoke about how Iniesta opened his eyes to how to play the game and how you can disorganize the opposition. And he says it was just by watching Iniesta dribble straight through the middle of the pitch. Because when you think about it, when you remember the way Iniesta used to do, the way he used to carry the ball, as he carries the ball straight through the middle, it doesn't matter what you do with the ball if you're just dribbling into an alleyway. Once you're dribbling into a bunch of players, you're going to draw attention to you. So you're going to have players coming to you at all times. No matter what, you're going to get players who are going to constantly attract you because you're a guy who has the ball, you're dribbling, they don't know if you're going to shoot, they don't know if you're going to pass, they don't know if you're going to go to the left, you're going to go to the right, but you're carrying the ball. And I feel like in these kind of games, and I think especially going forward, we saw this being an issue against Newcastle and Everton, because once we got stifled in the wide areas and teams were really compact, we lacked that sort of ball carrying straight for the middle. Look at what Onana did against us. That's a sample size of what we lacked. His ability just to carry the ball was really threatening to us, and that's something that we lacked in our team as well. I think just having a player, especially in that left centre position, like I said, Xhaka has done well this season. He's having a great season. He's done well, but especially post the World Cup, you've seen it. He's not been able to maintain it, because when you think about it, what he was doing in the first half of the season, that's not natural to him. You know what I mean? He's making these bursting ones into the box. He's not that kind of player, making these long bursting ones. He's not a box-to-box midfielder. He's just a player with a lot of engine and who's very smart and understands what space to attack. But these aren't things that come natural to him. You know, receiving the ball back to defenders, under pressure, receiving, turning and driving into the opposition players and carrying the ball. These aren't things that are natural to him, but this is something that we need to start looking for in the future. Left centre mid, someone that's going to play that role. That's what we need from that kind of player. And I think, like, obviously, if you look at what we currently have in the squad, you've got the likes of Smith Rowe, who's got the quality to do something like that. You've got Patino, who's on loan, who's got the quality to do something like that. But I think this is something that obviously Smith Rowe at the moment has got his fitness issues. Patino's on loan. We need to see what he does in friendly. Even Fabio Vieira, that's another guy as well who's got the qualities to do, receive the ball under pressure, carry the ball, draw players to him, and then release the ball. This is how you disorganize a team that's very organized. You cause chaos by running at them and carrying the ball, and these are the kind of thing that opens up space when there isn't space out wide. This is also why you stretch the pitch. You stretch the pitch to be able to create more spaces in the middle. It's supposed to allow you to be able to occupy spaces centrally. And I feel like, obviously, if the likes of Fabio Vieira are not going to be ready, or Patino isn't ready, or we can't trust Smith Rowe's fitness issues, I think that's a position that we need to start targeting. Obviously, we were linked with Declan Rice and Caicedo because of how they can be a backup for Partey, but at the same time they can also cover for Xhaka as well. But Rice and Caicedo, yes, they can offer that engine the same way Xhaka's offering. Yes, they're more mobile, more defensive qualities and things like that. Ideally, you want them playing 6. but what you want from that 8. Even in some games, they can also play as an 8 as well. You see what I mean? But I think long term, what you want in that 8 position is someone who has more natural talent in that area of the pitch. We can always balance it out. Having the players, we got Partey anyway, so you can always play sometimes Partey and Rice or Partey and Caicedo, whatever the case may be. But you also want to have another guy who you can rely on, who's more offensive kind of player who can play in that position. You saw how Pep did it with how he was rotating between David Silva and Gundogan. Like maybe like in bigger games, Gundogan comes in, or like it's Bernardo Silva or Gundogan. You know what I mean? He'll rotate between who plays that sort of position. I think that's what we need. We need to, yes, we can get Declan Rice or Caicedo, guys who can play as a 6, but also play as an 8 as well. At the same time, you also want to have these guys who can receive under pressure. Obviously, ideally, you want to promote the likes of Patino, Fabio Vieira, Smith Rowe. But if we can't rely on them going into next season, then that's a position that we need to also add. That's like I said, there's 2 important positions that we need to add to the team, and that's left wing and left centre mid. In terms of competition for Martinelli and a long-term replacement for Xhaka. And I think a player with this profile where he can receive the ball back to goal, turn, carry the ball, run directly at defenders, and be creative, have a final ball, have final actions. That's a profile that's going to really help us going forward, because the more we continue to improve and we continue to be good, the more you're going to get teams that are going to be defending like this against us, defending really deep, really compact, and just waiting to counter-attack and being very rigid. The more you're going to face teams like that, the more you need more ball carrying ability, more creativity in the central areas. And I think that's why that area is key. The other thing I also wanted to talk about again was, again, this is why I say it. I mean, you see at times people on the timeline will be like, oh, just trust Martinelli, trust Xhaka, like they're having good seasons. I think you have to remember, like, even if we win the title this season, that's not a situation whereby we need to stand still and just pause and, start smelling the roses and things like that. When you're on top is when you need to continue to improve. And this is what Alex Ferguson did really well, whereby he continued to improve whilst continue to rebuild the team and continue to transition and create more teams whilst he was on top. You don't wait till your team's completely finished. This is what's the issue that Liverpool are having. Liverpool waited so long for all their players to age at the same time. Like some of their best players, while they were at their best, the likes of Henderson, Mane, Salah, Firmino, Milner, some of all these guys, Van Dijk, some of all these guys, they all aged at the same time. All of them aged at the same time. And even the ones that are younger have been playing so many games. Like motivation is a real thing. Like a lack of motivation after winning so much is a real thing. You have to continue to keep on adding to the squad. Here and there, you just keep on adding just to boost the team. This is what Pep did really well as well. But I feel like going into this season is something they haven't done really well. Maybe they were expecting that they were being, maybe they knew they were being investigated, which is why they didn't properly transition properly this time. Because what they had been doing in the past is what they've done really well is continue to keep on building and adding to the team. They've done this really well in the past, but going into this season, they didn't do that well enough, especially after losing Gabriel Jesus, losing Sterling, things like that. They didn't add enough quality where they should have, and that's what's hurting them right now. De Bruyne's got old. De Bruyne's old already. You know what I mean? They already lost David Silva before, but now De Bruyne's getting old. But they didn't have a plan for an old De Bruyne. You know what I mean? They didn't really have the plan for that. For him, I mean, De Bruyne is still good, but he's getting older. You know what I mean? So, and then now he's on the bench. So they should have had more of a plan. They should have had more of a plan for the point that they were losing Gabriel Jesus, they were losing Sterling. Those are goal threats from wide areas. They're having to rely so much on Haaland for goals. You know what I mean? Because there's nobody else that's also attacking the box. So these are all areas that's what I'm saying. When you're in the league, when you're top, if you win the league, you have to continue to keep on improving and keep on adding to the team and keep on transitioning and keep on building your team. Take lessons from Alex Ferguson to see how he built his team and how he maintained his dominance at the top is by continuing to keep on rebuilding and never accept that yes, we're good. No, it doesn't matter. Even if people obviously you're looking at our team and you think we have young players and things like that, but that doesn't matter. You still need to keep on motivating the young players by adding more competition, allowing them to so they don't relax. You know what I mean? Keep on adding more competition so they know that even if we won, yes, we've won the title this time. Even if they're not motivated to win another title, they must be motivated to keep their position in the team. And you do that by adding more quality to the team so that they know that their position is at risk. So they have to keep on performing. That's how you keep on pushing the players. So I feel like when you say you want a player to another left winger, that doesn't mean that you don't rate Martinelli or whatever the case may be. It just means that you want to add more competition, you know what I mean, to the area to ensure that someone else is pushing him. If Martinelli ends up being better than the left winger that we bring in, then so be it. Say, for example, we sign Mudryk. if Martinelli ended up being better than Mudryk, then who cares? It doesn't really matter, you know what I mean? Because at the end of the day, maybe the new player coming in is what's driven Martinelli. You know what I mean? I saw Martinelli coming against Man City in the cup game, and look how direct he was, how he was attacking the box and everything, all because Trossard started the game. Maybe that's what lit the fire underneath him. You know what I mean? Where another player comes in, but this is what we got to do. This is how we got to add more quality to the team. But yeah. And in saying that as well, I want to talk about Martinelli a little bit as well. I think, for me, I don't know what's going on, but I think maybe Gabriel Jesus has a part to play in this as well as obviously the likes of Zinchenko drifting inside, Xhaka drifting in, attacking the half space as well. But Martinelli ends up being stuck wide, like he's stuck so wide on the pitch. I think when Gabriel Jesus was here, he used to rotate a lot. He would drift to the wide areas as well. Martinelli would drift inside. Nketiah obviously is doing that less, but Martinelli is so wide. I mean, yes, I understand he's not like a central player, but he's someone that you want in the box. So if you're like, on the last line, obviously because we're so dominant as well, we're not playing any transition kind of style. So it's hard for him to be making all these runs in behind, like the one we saw where he made that run in behind. Can't remember what game it was. It might have been United, I think it might have been. I can't remember. Or no, Brighton, where he scored the fourth goal, where he made that run in behind. We're not often in those kind of situations where we're playing transitional football. So he's not really always on the last line. You know what I mean? So then in that sense, because we're just so dominant on the ball, he just ends up very wide on the pitch. And it's like he can't really make meaningful contribution being that wide. You know what I mean? He helps us to create space in the middle and to do little combinations, but he's not able to make meaningful contribution. I think we need to see more overlaps from the likes of Xhaka. Like, and that's why I also say if we had a more natural player in that position, someone who can also overlap Martinelli as well in the wide area and allow him to come inside, because it's not that you want Martinelli to be on the inside in the central areas, it's that you want him to be on the inside in the box. You know what I mean? Closer to the box, supporting the striker, getting on the end of crosses. So like when Saka is cutting inside, it's not just a striker that's waiting in a box, but Martinelli is also in a box as well. At the same time, I think we need to see more. We need to make some tweaks in the system to ensure that Martinelli is receiving a bit more centrally in the box to offer us more of a goal for it. Because at the moment he's just way too wide. But yeah, and again, as I mentioned previously in the other comment, the difference in quality between him and Saka at the moment is obviously is very significant. You can see, and I think but obviously players develop in different ways. But I still think it's important that we improve in that left wing area. I think it's important that we sign a top class player to play in that area long term, in terms of like trying to win the title, or not. Say we win the title already, but trying to go back to back or trying to compete for the Champions League. That's another key area for me that we need to sign. I've mentioned left centre mid already, but left wing is always another key area again. And then the last one is obviously we're seeing on the timeline, we're seeing all this Gabriel Jesus versus Nketiah. Obviously, our fans can never be happy with two players being very good and playing one position. There has to be a civil war, obviously. But regardless, for me, the biggest difference I see, and I think if Gabriel Jesus was available against Newcastle and Everton, those games might have been different, because what we lack in the midfield, in terms of like I was saying about Xhaka not being able to receive, turn, and carry the ball directly. What we lack in that sense, Gabriel Jesus offers that, because he drops deep and does that kind of job like a midfielder. Maybe this is also why Xhaka was making more runs into the box, because Gabriel Jesus was drifting deep into midfield, which was then creating space. The same thing with Gabriel Jesus drifting wide as well, which is creating space for Martinelli to go in the box. So yeah, one of the biggest difference that we've seen is that Nketiah has looked more like a better finisher, more of a goal for it, getting into the box, and he's taking his chances a lot better than what Jesus was doing the whole season. But what Jesus does better than Nketiah in that sense is that he's able to drop deep, drift in more into midfield, drift into the wide areas, offer more link-up play. I think if you remember the goal against Wolves, where Gabriel Jesus drifted inside, he switched positions with Martinelli. Martinelli was in the box. Jesus was on the left-hand side, and he was drifting inside, and then Fabio Vieira made like a run into the box, and then Jesus fed him and then crossed the ball. I can't remember who scored the goal. It might have been Odegaard. I can't remember. But it was in the game against Wolves. But in that game, you saw what Jesus offers in terms of dropping deep and then carrying the ball and then therefore disorganizing the position because he's dropping deep and then he's running, attacking the box. That's the kind of thing that we're lacking in midfield. But that's what Jesus offers us from the striker position because he plays kind of like a false nine. And obviously that's what Nketiah doesn't do. You see what I mean? So there's qualities with both players. Both players offer different things. I think Nketiah's done really well in Jesus' absence. And he's done really well in terms of like offering us more of a goal threat, more option, more presence inside the box, and he scores some crucial goals. But I think when Jesus does come back as well, he's also going to offer us something different for these kind of games against Newcastle and Everton as well. So I think we can always rotate between the pair of them. They offer different things, but they both offer really good qualities that has been useful to us this season. So yeah, man, I feel like we've got two great strikers. Obviously, we got Balongo on loan. We'll see what he does in pre-season and things like that. But again, these are good problems for us to have. These are good problems for us, and having those three players allows us to focus all of our money in the transfer market next season towards the two crucial areas. Like I said, left centre mid and left wing, the two crucial areas, or those are the main areas for us to focus on, whilst we find out who the better striker is of those three. Another area that we can then target after that would then be obviously Partey's long-term replacement, maybe possibly Rice or Caicedo or things like that, and then right back. But yeah, those are my thoughts anyways on the game. Like I said, man, I feel like the title was definitely ours. The Man City game is going to be massive. But yeah, anyways, see you guys next video.